Good morning and welcome to the ACI Europe webinar on the future of airport retail and commerce. I am Michael Stanton-Geddes. I'm the Director of Economics and Competition at ACI Europe. We're delighted to have three outstanding members of the ACI Europe Commercial Forum here to speak with our audience today. We will have short presentations from each presenter with opportunity for questions at the end of the discussion. Before we move to our presentations, and I'll introduce our speakers later, I want to cover the housekeeping rules. Our objective with our webinars is to share expertise, best practice, vision, knowledge, and the capacity of our business partners who work closely with all of the ACI Europe airport members. We welcome questions during the meeting as well as after the meeting by email or in the chat. And there will be a recording of this presentation that is available. Before we move on to the expert presentations, I wanted to provide an update on where we are with traffic in Europe. Our benchmark remains the situation in 2019 before the COVID pandemic and national travel restrictions. We focus often on the headline number for Europe, having reached 4% below 2019 passenger levels. Far more important is the variation at the national level. And this list shows alphabetically, to not point out the best and the worst, but it shows the countries in Europe and their passenger traffic levels for August versus August 2019. We see huge variation with the strong performers in the Balkans and tourist destinations, and other countries who remain more than one quarter below 2019 levels, including large markets like Germany and Finland. Passengers, of course, are incredibly important for travel retail. They are the people who spend in the terminals. So the good news is we do predict a recovery across Europe in 2024 and then continued growth out to 2027 and continuing onward in the long run. Also looking at the airport side of the business, at ACI Europe, we work with the airports, so this is not spend per passenger, which is the important number for you, but this is what an airport sees for airport non-aeronautical revenue in the passenger-related categories. So we look just at the non-aero business segments such as food and beverage, travel retail, duty-free, advertising, and other concessions. And we see a sustained increase, more than 10% above 2019. This is in nominal terms, so there are questions about inflation, and there are also questions about what can airports do to make sure this remains a sustained increase into the future. And that's where we'll hear from our experts today. I'm pleased to turn over immediately to my commercial forum colleague, Thomas Henningsen. Thomas is a partner at Blueprint, which he has been with since 2016, if not one of the founders. Blueprint is a 360-degree business development agency working with airports, but also across the travel sector to help them find success. Thomas, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Michael, and ACI for giving us the opportunity to speak today. You should be able, ladies and gentlemen, to see my presentation. Michael, please correct me if you can't. But I'd like to extend a warm welcome to all of you. And today we're going to have an exciting conversation about a question that has been passed on to us, which is by no means an easy question to address, simply because it is something that really keeps us up at night, to put it mildly. And that question really comes down to future travel retail customers. How do we increase their spend in airports? This question here is something that we spend a lot of time wondering about every day. And I'm sure you share our passion for this question as well. So for the purpose of today's conversation, we're going to split it into, first of all, defining who are future travel retail customers. And then we're going to take on the question, how do we increase their spend? The first part, future travel retail customers, can be defined with a single word, Gen Z. So we'll be talking about Gen Zs today. And the second part, how do we increase their spend? We're going to be looking at a very short answer, which is building communities. Airports in general have an opportunity to convert themselves into communities. And we have brought our business partner, ITS, the CEO of ITS, Morten Pankoke, here today to talk a little bit more about how digitalization can play a role in converting travelers into shoppers. So bringing us back to who are the travel retail customers? Well, by 2028, Gen Z will be the biggest consumer profile in travel retail. Today, they only represent 9%, but the tipping point really comes in 2028. That's exactly where the sheer numbers of Gen Zs will be bigger than that of the millennials, which is the biggest consumer profile we are serving in travel retail today. Now, that's all good. Had it only been that Gen Z would be exactly the same as the millennials, but that's not the case. Gen Zs are fundamentally different from the millennial travelers. And we'll be sharing with you today some hard data, facts and figures that really confirms that. I've heard in many of our workshops that Gen Zs are just younger than the millennials, and they are also just have less spend, so to speak. That is also true, but that's also where the similarities kind of start. Gen Zs as such spend 5 to 7 hours every day on social media, 5 to 7 hours. So that's pretty much a full-time job. And as such, it is because they really were born as true digital natives in a world where internet preceded them. So they don't know anything else but the internet. And that's exciting opportunities for all of us in travel retail. But besides that, Gen Zs are very focused on social commerce, as we call it. Social commerce where Gen Z travelers tend to buy products, services that are eco-friendly, that are doing good things for the environment. They're very focused on when they travel. And here's the really good news, is that they travel a lot. So you tend to see a lot of Gen Zs being frequent travelers, although they're young. But the bad news is that when they go through our airports, they tend to spend less, significantly less than all the other counterparts, the older generations. And when asked by Mindset, which is travel retail's leading market research agency, which interviewed Gen Z travelers, why are you spending less when you go through the airports? The answer is often that the products and services are less relevant to the Gen Zs. And that is a red flag. This is something we need to, as an industry, to be very mindful towards. Simply put, today, given that they're 9%, obviously has less of an impact. But as we move towards 2028, that is the tipping point. That is exactly where we potentially could see spend across the board drop, and therefore revenue top line for airports and concessionaires drop as well. Which of course begs the big question, how do we then engage the Gen Z travelers? How do we convert them into shoppers? And the very short answer to that question is communities. As an industry, we have the opportunity to convert, for example, airports into communities. So in the past, airports were infrastructures. They developed into experience hubs. Now the opportunity here is to build communities. The keyword community really resonates with Gen Zs, and that's what we see in the data and the research. And particularly in a community where a shared purpose, shared value, all around a common sense of belongingness is critical to the Gen Z travelers. And I'm using here Singapore Changi Airport as an example, along with Singapore as a city and as a country, as a best-in-class example. So as a frequent traveler myself, if there's one airport I go out to early in the morning, it's definitely Singapore Changi Airport. I'm there because I want to do selfies with my colleague when I'm standing in the Jewel. I'm excited about going airside because there's such a wide range of exciting airside shopping experiences. Singapore, the city, the country, the airport has really managed to create a community that really appeals to a sense of belongingness. Now, if the short answer is communities, we need to have a closer look at how we build communities. We have identified 4 critical building blocks: digitalization, sustainability, personalization, experience-driven. Now, these headlines are not new to our industry. Perhaps what goes under each headline has significantly evolved over the past 4 to 5 years, probably accelerated by COVID-19 as well. If we had to identify one building block that is mission critical, that kind of supersedes the other ones, it would be digitalization. Digitalization, which is really fueled by artificial intelligence, will continue to shape and perhaps fundamentally also reshape the whole landscape of travel retail, because it will be going across all categories, all experiences in an airport. And as such, I would like to then pass on the word to Morten Pankoke, who is the CEO of ITS, to talk more about how digitalization as a tool, as a business development tool, can help airports and concession partners convert Gen Z travelers into shoppers. Morten, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Good morning, Morten. You are still on mute. Could we have help in unmuting Morten?
Yeah, I am.
There we go.
You can hear me now.
hear you
And I
well.
hope you can see my presentation as well.
We do.
Perfect. Okay. Thanks for handing it over to me, Thomas, and thanks for inviting us, ACI. Yes, digitalization drives personalization and increases experience value. And what's in all that? I mean, what basically digitalization offers us is a access to a lot of data that we can then try to use to actually offer the right message or the right communication to the right person at the right time and place. And in doing so, it can help us also increase the experience of the person that are actually at that time and place when they are actually there, when they want to experience what is going on around them, and open them up to actually be not only people that are in the airport, but also some people that actually spent something in the airport. And so the key sort of element in what I'm going to talk about is going to be data. What can we do with data? How can we get our hands on the right data? And how can we bring that across to the right passenger at the right time and place? There's a lot of data out there. I mean, worldwide, if we're just looking at the search machines around the world, we can generate a lot of insights on a probabilistic level about any kind of segment around the world. It could be pregnant women in the New York area looking for anything they might want to look for. It could be any kind of football fans in London that have a lot of similarities, and then we can start building products, services, messages, communication that are aimed at them. But of course, I mean, that's on a sort of global level. What is of interest for us is how can we boil that down into from a macro data kind of approach to a more micro. And the good thing about airports is that they are kind of born community. We know what kind of passenger will visit us when. We know how long they will be there. We can get our hands of data that tells us a lot about what they want to do, what they do, what people like them has been doing when they were there, and so on. And from all that, we can start building more sensible communication, and also make sure that we have as many touch points available as possible to reach them at the right time and place. So how do we do that? Of course, then we need to be, first of all, aware of where can we and will we or may we meet our passenger. What kind of touch points do we have available? And I'm not only talking about digital touch points, also, of course, the physical ones, because that one of the unique elements of an airport is that now we have a sort of gated community where we both can approach the passenger physically, have them move about in a physical environment, but also at the same time extract a lot of data from digital platforms that are being used in the airport, and that can be added to help us know much more about our passengers and then deliver the right message to them at the right place and time. So, being a micro environment, sort of a seed seen in the big perspective, we actually can get to know our individual passenger quite well from the tools we have available already. All passengers in an airport have a boarding pass. From that, we can extract a lot of information about where they're going, what kind of passenger they are, if they are frequent flyers or not. And we can start combining that with insights to how do they move about in the airport, when are they in the airport, how long will they be there, And we can also start looking into different kind of behaviors that could be both on screen on the mobile device or any other devices that we might have available in the airport. And we can then start tracking them around in the airport with different tools like beacons and so on. So the big opportunity is here that the more one-to-one we can get our communication and the tracking of the individual passenger, the more powerful audience segmentation we can do, the more we can actually use both physical and digital behavior, and we can have more and more tools that can help us actually communicate to the important groups that we may be struggling hard to actually reach today, and that is most certainly groups like Gen Z and millennials. And the more we can get tools that can actually help us live report and analyze, and then use the information we get immediately in helping the individual passenger, the more we can drive higher conversion. So, is the Holy Grail hidden in the combination of a macro data approach and the micro data approach I just went through? I do think so, because that gives us the opportunity to both learn something about the passenger before they get to the airport and also start being in contact and also giving them the right information at the right time, all the way from home, maybe all the way from they start planning their trip, and then be able to monitor them directly and very diligently when they are in the airport. That could lead to different kind of insight tools. We can start to have really, really detailed consumer profiles based on what I just talked about, the user behavior, the profile data, the context. We can start really breaking down the different kind of patterns of behavior, movements, and so on in our airport. Here an example where we boil it all the way down to the individual flight, and then we could combine that with everybody speaking Chinese, traveling first class being males. And that gives us, of course, a lot of different insights to how we can approach them, how we can nudge them to spend more in the airport. We can also start looking very detailed into how much time they spend in the individual point of interest. Here's an example where they stay in duty free. How do they behave in there? How long do they stay? We can start monitoring which category they visit and so on, and sort of match that up against point of sale information. And of course, the more screens we have available, the more touch points we have available, the more insights we can start to gather. And we know from our own platform that we can see consistent 25% response rates, which means that 1 out of 4 of the passengers that sees or use this kind of platforms actually gives us a lot of knowledge back that we can then use to give them a better experience and also make them spend more in the airport. And last but not least, of course, this gives us tools that can help us also enhance the brand communication in airports, which will also lead to higher conversions, higher income for the retailers, for the brands, and not least for the airports. And one example is to start with work with geolocation. Here we have a virtual catchment zone. When the person you see to the right walks into it, while he's looking to his screen, while he's looking at his screen, he will have information that are related to walking into that zone. That's just one example of how we can start combining advertising that is already there with call to action that will lead to higher conversion in the airport. That's it from my side. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Thomas and Morten. You've got 26 seconds. I'm going to launch a poll. We're testing this out to gather some live data, as you just discussed. So Thomas spoke about the importance of community for travel retail. And when we discussed before, you said airports are no longer infrastructure, airports are community. And then we need to understand who is in our community. Morten explained how we know who's in our community. So what do we do to create a community experience and drive travel retail spending?
We'll leave this open. Okay, Thomas, do you want to go ahead or should I?
Yeah, I'll be happy to discuss the idea of a community. I think first of all, the stakeholders in the community are examples: the airport owners, airport operators, the concessions. Of course, not to forget the consumers, the passengers. We could extend that towards also the airlines if you really want to start with the end in mind and work our way backwards. But what the key thing here is that the community needs to have a shared feeling. That is the important thing, that airports has the opportunity, they don't have to, but they have the opportunity to grow from infrastructure into experience hubs and therefore into communities. That is what resonates with the Gen Z travelers. Morten?
Yeah, I could just briefly add. I've sort of mentioned that the relation between the physical and the digital world or environment creates a whole new opportunity where you can work with the sense of place, sense of being part of something, creating experience that are related to that specific community. And also the digital tools gives us the ability to actually talk to the not only individuals, but also the different segmented groups that consider themselves as part of the same community. So it's not only about having one big community, but creating a space where all these communities feel at home and feel that it makes sense for them to be there, rather than just being a place you want to get out of. So that's where all the knowledge, all the data can help us on one side, but then on the other side, we need to create a physical environment that matches the insights and uses the insights to create something that is really a huge and big and fun experience for everybody from Gen Zs to the 65-year-old.
Michael, and if I may add, as another example is, for example, a specific topic that communities can rally behind and will resonate with Gen Z travelers is, for example, sustainability. If you look into Helsinki Airport, that has launched the first second-hand retail store and combined that with a cafe F&B experience that is also sustainability, as a great example of how the community, as an airport concession partners, are taking that step forward. I hope that serves as an example.
There was a question in the chat as well, but we'll take that at the end. It's a detailed number question about what percentage of Gen Zs are allowing you to track them. We'll now move on to our second presentation. I'm pleased that Swapnil Kulkarni Chauhan, who's from Munich Airport International's the consulting arm of Munich Airport. She's the head of their airport management and commercial division and has led projects around the globe looking at revenue maximization, facility optimization, and digital transformation. Swapnil, the floor is yours.
Thanks,
and we see
Michael.
your slides already. And I'll give you a 10-minute warning as agreed.
Thank you so much. Thank you, ACI, and for giving me the opportunity on behalf of MI to present this topic. The idea here is also something which I'm taking forward from what we just heard Thomas and Morten talking about, is mainly the Gen Z generation, which is expected to lead from 2028, and specifically in terms of Thomas's point that presently they are expected, or rather they are already spending 5 to 7 hours on social media platforms. Having said that, I guess it's also important with what Morten emphasized on how digitalization is expected to reshape the overall airport travel retail sector going forward. Taking the same discussion forward, the topic today that I have is mainly on metaverse. In 2022, we all heard about how metaverse was hyped from a technology buzzword. Facebook also rebranded the complete Meta, the Meta platform, and announced investments of around 10 billion on an annual basis. In this presentation today, I plan to cover these areas of how the retail has evolved, what are the basics of metaverse, what are the different illustrations in metaverse in terms of tourism, airport, as well as duty free. Is it really a hype or hope? And whether there is a future of metaverse in terms of airport retail. we are all mindful and aware about how the evolution of retail has happened from brick and mortar store to emergence of e-tailers, multi-channel operations, and what we see today is mainly an omni-channel platform. Uh, in terms of understanding where we are on a passenger journey of omni-channel, I guess what most of the airports today predominantly would agree is that the journey in terms of commercial and passenger engagement is mainly commencing post the security check and passport control area. What historically that we have also seen is all these touch points are actually talking in silos with each stakeholder, which is mainly the retailers having their own different narratives and presenting their own types of experiences. As airports, our biggest challenge has always been that we are not having the right insight on the passengers and they essentially remain anonymous to all of us. The airlines, and even for that matter, the concessionaires, are more aware about how many passengers are actually visiting their stores, and the airlines definitely in terms of the passenger numbers. Uh, as on date, what we are also seeing is that there is a lot of integration happening in all these touch points to identify the critical pathways where we can start engaging with the passengers in terms of commercial offerings even before the journey begins. And this is what we are talking about, a digital experience. Uh, this is where the step of metaverse begins. And before we start into understanding metaverse, probably what's important for us, all of us to know, is how the journey from internet to metaverse has been. In 1991, there was the open internet which went live. In 2007, we also had the mobile internet experience, which was the breakthrough with the introduction of iPhone. In 2014, we were able to immerse ourselves in virtual reality with Google AR glasses. And in 2022, we were all familiarized with the idea of a metaverse. Before we understand what a metaverse is, it's very important for us to just briefly touch base upon understanding how the Web3 has evolved. So, just to quickly give a glimpse to all of the audience today, Web 1 was mainly when the internet initially got introduced, where the important point and the message was of transmitting the information. We were basically all consumers of this information, and the internet was predominantly on a read only concept. In that same era, we also had companies which got introduced like Yahoo, eBay, Amazon, and Google as well. In the second era, which is Web 2, the concept mainly got evolved from only read to read and write. And this is where we are also seeing that we are no longer consuming information, but we are also, to a larger extent, generating information. This is when we are also now actively involved on social media platforms through Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Maybe also to a larger extent where Amazon, Airbnb, Uber also got introduced to us. Uh, as on date, we are now in the Web3 era where we are not only reading and writing, but we are also owning the content. This concept started off mainly with the spread of cryptocurrencies and blockchain. And what we are now seeing is this is basically the version which is expected to evolve in the near future. It is at a very early stage and it is expected to transition very in a gradual process. As per McKinsey, Web3, the market size is expected to be approximately 80 billion by 2030. And this is mainly the back-end technology, which is then supporting the metaverse version. So what is then a metaverse? A metaverse is basically what we see is the next evolution of internet. What we are seeing is expected to be a collective space where physical and digital worlds are going to converge, and we are going to have a more immersive, interactive experience in terms of augmented reality. To a larger extent, this is also something which people today call it as an extended reality. Uh, Again, going back to what the records say, McKinsey is expecting travel retail industry, specifically in terms of metaverse, to be around 20 billion by 2030. Very briefly, these are the key enablers of metaverse. We are talking about a mixed reality version. We are talking about computing power through cloud or edge. Uh, it would also then require network and connectivity in terms of 5G, 6G, or wireless, AI and machine learning. We are all familiar to a larger extent about the 3D avatars, which get these cartoonish characters that we are seeing. But we do foresee that this is expected to change in the near future. In terms of payment, we are talking about blockchain and NFTs. And last but not the least, the Internet of Things. This brings us to the next question of what are the current illustrations that we have in terms of metaverse, specifically in relation to tourism and airport and travel retail. Presently, in terms of tourism, we have three good examples that we can offer. We see that Zepto World, which is basically a travel agency around Korea, has a smartphone app, and this approximately has 190 million users today. In a similar manner, we also have the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, who has initiated its first World Heritage HEGRA on the Metaverse platform. Similar to that, Thailand also has encouraged tourism in terms of having a virtual durian orchard through these avatars. The next one is again talking about where do we stand in terms of metaverse for airports as well as airlines. Airports, there are two critical examples that we have. Bengaluru Airport in India launched its metaverse platform for T2 in collaboration with AWS. Presently, this version is mainly focusing on wayfinding and making the passengers aware of what and where the airport is. Changi, on the other hand, has rather extended its overall version, and we see this jointly being done by Robolex. As on date, they have around 66 million daily active users and 40 million experiences that they generate. In terms of airlines, we have Qatar Airways, who is providing a virtual tour. This is more of a VR experience for the premium check-in at Hamad International Airport. Similar to that, we are also seeing that Emirates is expected to have a distinctive metaverse experience in the near future. When it comes to duty free, we have three live examples, mainly in Asia, who are aggressively pursuing this platform. The first one is Lotte Duty Free, and they have tied up and rather have provided this partnership with Caliverse, which is their own in-house subsidiary, to provide two ultra-realistic metaverse contents. One is a virtual fitting room, and the other is a virtual concert. It's very important for probably all of us to also know that in South Korea, the government is exploring opportunities to permit online sales of South Korean duty-free products. And what we do see is that in such an event, if this initiative is approved, then the metaverse platform is expected to increase largely. Similar to that, we also have DFS and we also have Sheila Duty Free today. Whether metaverse is a hyper hope, and I guess we presently all
We've got 5 minutes left, but no.
Thank you, Michael.
It looks
Thank
like
you
you're
so
right
much.
on time.
Yes, I hope so. So just taking this forward is whether we are on hyper hope. Metaverse experiments have so far not really resulted in any meaningful payoffs, what we see. We have also read that Meta's reality labs also incurred losses of around 10 billion in USD, and there were mass layoffs which happened. European Union also had hosted a 24-hour party in Metaverse, but just had very handful people who turned up. And most importantly, with the introduction of ChatGPT and generative AI, the complete Metaverse hype has actually got drastically eclipsed. This is just a quick demographic of where we see how the hype has actually got reduced from 2022 as on date. What's important for us to know is Middle East and Asia are still aggressively pitching and pursuing this. I would like to also add into this element that Dubai has developed a metaverse strategy for the complete country to basically identify which are the areas where they can really optimize on metaverse, including retail. This is basically a small graph presented by Gartner, which actually helps us understand how the technology gets evolved in different types of life cycles. What we did see in 2022 in terms of metaverse was a peak of inflated expectations, and where it currently stands is, as per the current norm, is a disillusionment. What is expected to eventually occur is a plateau of productivity. So though metaverse may not really get completely extinct, it will still remain to a larger extent somewhere on the horizon. This brings me to the last bit of how the future of metaverse is expected to evolve. What we are currently seeing is basically metaverse is owned by Meta, but going forward, it is not expected to be a monopoly. It would be a competitive environment. We also do see, in terms of having, instead of these cartoonish characters, hyper realistic avatars, we also are foreseeing that metaverse wearables, all these haptic suits of goggles and the gloves, may not be there going in the future. It will be mainly on the mobile user phones. And predominantly, metaverse analytics will actually play a very critical role in terms of identifying the user activity data, which helps us identify how the users are interacting in the metaverse, the transaction data, whether they are purchasing something on the global platform, whether it is digital or even in the real time basis, and which are the different types of devices that they are actually accessing that data from. All these four critical elements will then develop into data privacy, and there would be eventually a responsible metaverse governance coming into foreplay. This brings me to my last slide of how we envisage a metaverse journey in the near future at the airport. What we are seeing in the light blue here are the most likely cases of where metaverse is expected to probably be evolved in terms of a pre-trip at airport and a post-trip activity. And the ones which are in the dark blue, where we foresee presently a very limited usage in terms of metaverse. Inspiration, as we all just saw, some examples of tourism which are currently being there are expected to further increase. In terms of booking, there is already an online booking, which is gradually customers and passengers are very comfortable using. So we don't see a very informative or rather any advanced technology there. Yes, the extended reality interactions will be there. You may probably have virtual travel agents doing that. When it comes to arrival at the airport, we also saw Bangalore airport mainly predominantly showing the wayfinding and Changi as well. But once they are at the airport, we do see a lot of immersive experiences getting increased. Retail and advertisement also, where a passenger is basically buying in the digital element, but the actual inventory or the product is being brought to them right at the gate. Gamification is where Changi is currently still leading to a larger extent, and that may continue, especially with the Gen Z generation. In terms of F&B, though passengers may be able to see what are the different food courts, the consumption will happen on ground. And the last but not the least is where we are talking about the departures and the post-travel, which will mainly still predominantly be in the physical realm. So this is a quick brief. I hope that this has actually given an insight of how we see the journey of metaverse evolving in travel retail. And I'm happy to take questions if any. Thank you, Michael. I hope I'm still on time.
You're right on time. That was brilliant.
Perfect.
You got us to the departure gate on time.
Thank you.
I'm we'll have a simpler poll this time. Last time you had to think of a word. This time it's yes or no. Have you put metaverse applications, or have you thought about the metaverse? Does the word metaverse appear anywhere in your business planning? This is mostly for airports, but of course it's interesting for any company out there. And I think the question and the relevance is very important for the community to grapple with this. I think probably a lot of people have read. Wow, I'm already seeing the response: 85% no. It's a clear answer. We hope to have a bit of a provocative one, because I think what Swapnil, if I summarize what you said, what you're challenging us as the airport community is to understand the metaverse needs to be part of the business plan.
Yes.
You talked about the metaverse being a competitive environment, and I wondered, economists see goods as complementary or substitutes. Does the metaverse substitute and replace travel, or is it a complement and a generator of travel?
What we do see, Michael, is that it is expected to coexist. Definitely, there's no substitution to physically being in a place, but we cannot overlook the fact that digitalization would play a very critical role in the near future. And we cannot, having said that, overlook of where are the passengers, which are mainly expected to be Gen Zs, are going to spend most of their time, which is social media. And in that case, this is expected to evolve, and we cannot really overlook metaverse. That's how I see it.
Yeah. Great. I'm sure we'll have a lot of questions about this, so I encourage people to put those questions into the chat, and we'll gather those and have a discussion at the end. I'll now ask Martin Stoyer to turn on his camera and share his slides if he's with us still. Martin?
Yes.
Martin is the founder of Kinetic Consultancy and managing director. Kinetic advises companies in the airport space, where we know Martin, and the travel retail sector more broadly. You have independent and international experience. What's especially interesting from the description is this focus on balancing the experience-focused front end and the business-oriented back end. But most importantly, Martin is currently Vice Chair of the ACI Europe Commercial Forum. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you, Michael, for that kind introduction. And before I start my presentation, let me steal a minute of this webinar to invite everybody who is a member to join the ACI Commercial Forum in Europe. We have quite an active group already, but of course we like to have more people as part of our group. And if you like the presentations that you saw here today, we have similar exchanges on these type of topics, but also much more practical topics, such as what is the state of your business, what is revenue doing, so forth and so on. And next to that, it's also a fun event to visit. So if you have any questions on the ACI Commercial Forum, reach out to Michael or myself or anyone else at ACI, and we're happy to connect you. So, sorry, Michael, it was off script, but
I'll start your 15 minutes now. You gained a minute.
Thank you. So, assuming that my presentation is visible.
It is visible, we see and hear.
Great. So, yes, I've been in the airport business quite a while, and what I've learned is if you've seen one airport, you've seen one airport. Circumstances are different, airports are different, communities are different, visitors are different, and of course, stakeholders are different. So with that knowledge, we have built a report which is called Building Blocks of the Future of Airport Commerce, because airport commerce, that's where our hearts and minds are at. And sorry, what we did is we conducted a survey amongst airport commercial experts and followed up with in-depth interviews with some leaders in the industry. We talked about trends, innovations, future categories, and of course, digital enhancement. So it gels well with the presentations of the other presenters. We cannot talk about the entire report because it's quite extensive, but you can download it for free from our website. And if you want a direct link, take a picture of this QR code you will get there. So we like to start with future categories in the airport. And we asked airports to think of a timescale 5 years from now and envision some categories' performance. Overall, we can see that the majority of core duty-free categories will perform stable in their perspective. And if you're in budget season, like many of us, I think this is an interesting graph to note also when your boss is asking for more sales. So showing that stable in these categories is very relevant. But of course, no boss is happy with saying it's going to be stable. Typically, bosses ask for more revenue and less costs. And that is if your bosses look like many of that we encounter during our practice. So we have also included some categories where future performance are much more volatile. So we could argue that leisure and entertainment is somewhat of a new category, and therefore the only way is up. That doesn't hold true when we look at advertising. That has been around for a long time, and still relatively many experts think that revenue will grow in the next 5 years. While in the report, other experts are covered more in detail about this. We believe for today, this is an interesting case to look at. And what we've compared is advertising as a subset of commercial revenue. And we've seen that it has actually been declining over the past 5 years, looking at the top line, so revenue. And we see only a slow recovery, not keeping up with the overall commercial recovery. And we wondered, of course, what is happening? Why is advertising not recovering as quickly? And what are experts seeing that could hint at the potential growth for advertising? Well, we took a look at out-of-home advertising in the traditional sense, like bus stop banners, posters along roadsides, etc. And we see that there's a similar decrease in advertising revenue, but in the out-of-home industry, digital advertising, such as LED screens, is growing much more rapidly. So, digital screens are, of course, becoming much more common and part of creating an engaging airport experience as well. And next to this, which I think is a wonderful example of LAX, we've seen examples in Vienna, for instance, an airport close to our heart. These screens allow for new advertising opportunities, from highly visible interactive screens to pragmatic advertising for all the small greens in the gate areas. But it's not the only shift that we see in advertising. The true value of advertising is not driving direct airport sales. From brand stores to sampling products, the true value is in the way which passengers are engaging with brands. And this is a very fundamental part, I think, of our business model. This shift in thinking, we believe, will drive the growing revenue of airport advertising and will bring balance to the value of revenue of airports. Why is it not working? Here we go. So, thanks for the comment on what you thought was interesting, Michael. Our tagline is creating experiences and propelling business. And of course, having a great experience, we saw some excellent presentations on that, that's valuable. But if you don't have a concrete solution, a business model attached to it, then the value diminishes. For instance, omnichannel as an experience, it's very sought after as an experience, but as an airport community, we have yet to bring a great strategy towards it or a business model. For now, it's more like a passenger experience strength rather than a solution. But of course, we can always change that. So Thomas said it as well, and Swapnil showed some really innovative ways of doing so. And we like it and we love it when passengers buy at airports. However, not all passengers do. We strive to open many channels to our passengers. We make buying as easy and fun as can be, but still a large portion is not buying. So what if we take the look at the fundamental assumption that underlie our thinking? And why not ask ourselves, what is buying? And especially with new generations, perhaps more than before, and with all the digital access points that we have, we can distinguish now what buying is. Maybe there's more than one element to it. To give you an example, how much did you buy from Google? I'm a frequent user of Google, and I was a bit worried the first year that at the end of the year, I would get a large bill from Google using their services. Turns out I didn't pay anything. So I thought Google is in financial trouble. And again, not so much. They make massive amounts of money. And I think there's a good clue in that. So Google is a truly digital high traffic business type. And airports are non-air business are physical high traffic business. So just like with Google, people in airports don't just spend money. They spend time, they spend attention, energy, and luckily also money. However, our business model is mainly focused on a transaction that only 5% of revenue is related to advertising, value that people find in the airport experience. So the value of being present in the airport isn't just the eyeballs, the glance of your brand or the money spent on your product. The true value of the airport experience is in the physical interaction that is possible and the immersive brand experience people can undergo physically. So next to attraction and transaction, we like to bring in a new business model, which has a tremendous value already online, but now for airports in interaction. So while many airports, these noise cancelling headphones are for sale, there's not many airports where there's a place where you can actually experience them. And if you can experience something and perhaps buy it later, maybe not at the airport, of course, that would be the preferred choice, but nevertheless, people tend to postpone those choices. There's a lot of value. So if we take a clue again from the online world and we see what an advertising value turns into when there's an interaction, and the online equivalent would be, let's say, a click, a reshare, a like. What happens to that value from an attraction to an interaction is 20-fold. And frankly, I was amazed by that increase of value, which is, of course, tremendous amount of value, something that we have not really been able to capture as an airport environment. So when a consumer interacts with the message, that value becomes 20 times as high. And this can drive the new era of advertising. It's not just about being able to touch a product on the shelf. We should start to design retail spaces to facilitate brand interactions more. The value of being visible in the airport lounge has eyeball value price based on footfall. And of course, the buying the headphones has the transactional value. The interactions have a more diverse set of valuations. But they also facilitate a great part of the passenger retail experience that we should start to put a value to. We work with a lot of new technologies, such as a meter accuracy tracking of individual shopper, still being GDPR compliant. I saw a question about that, and that's very important. Allows us to use more dynamic valuation conditions, such as interaction time with a brand or a product, or the occupancy rate of an experience, for instance. Camera technology can even analyze the number of times a product is being picked up or touched. Well, in the long run, these could all be a business model. They will firstly be very valuable insights for a brand to see how the consumers interact with your products. Do we exactly know what is the conversion rate for each store? Do we know what is the next stop? And how to design the shopping experience in such a way that you and your customers can interact with the product. So let's design for attraction, interaction, and transaction, bringing a future-proof business model to a great customer experience. And for those who missed it, again, the QR code, and I'm open for questions.
Thank you very much, Martin. I
With
will
pleasure.
start with, we're going back, and I don't have a lot of questions yet from the audience, but there were two related questions about, you mentioned GDPR compliance. Morten, you as well mentioned the concerns about data privacy and data collection. So there's a question of what, I think, two sides of the coin. How do we solve the issue of the compliance with the General Data Protection Rules, GDPR? And then how, if we're legally compliant, how do we make sure people tick the box to allow us to collect that data? That's the question. Do Gen Zs want them to track them through digital touch points? So, Morten, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, basically, the Gen Zs, of course, are pretty reluctant or pretty aware of how you, I mean, tap into their mobile devices, their own devices. So one choice is, of course, to try to see if you can get them actually to use platforms that are not their own, because then they do not have the same kind of reluctancy to actually start doing something and accepting that we use their data. That's, for example, what we do with the platform you can see up here, is actually trying to also, I mean, melt the metaverse and the reality together, so in a way that is attractive to the Gen Z, but also accepting that, of course, we should be GDPR compliant at all times. So even though if you log onto our platform using your boarding pass, we do not use your name, we do not use your seat number, and so on. So to ensure that we are we never know exactly who that person is, and we're not interested in that person. We are interested in the profile. We are interested in kind of segment they are part of, and so on. And all that we can collect without knowing anything about the individual. So I think there's an opportunity in a sort of, as I said, a fenced community like an airport, that we can actually attract them to approach other and use other platforms that can be available in a closed environment, and then generate data from that. And then we can, I mean, use and pair that with what I call macrocosmos data, which is generated from their own platforms. But all in all, we have a unique opportunity because we are kind of a microcosmos, and we can approach them individually without actually knowing the individual or tapping any kind of information from their social media platforms.
Yeah. I think it's very valid what you share, Morten, and I think we should not forget that GDPR is about collecting personal data. It's not about blocking insights. So we can share insights, and I think a lot of generations are already familiar with sharing certain insights and see the benefits of that. So as long as we make it convenient for them on the day of travel, it helps. And there's a lot of systems available. One that we like to work with, for instance, follow microsignals of telephones from curb to gate. So now you can have the entire customer journey at your airport from the parking lot, and there you can target them. Similar, I think, with the system of ITS. Once people say, okay, I'm okay with this, you can contact me directly. That's fine, but we always give them an option.
And just to add, just a quick one. I mean, there's no community in the world where you have so many loyalty programs available. So if you can start coordinating data from all those loyalty programs, you have a jewel in your hand.
Absolutely. We often say it is an evidence of how disloyal the air traveler is the fact that you need these loyalty programs, and they're all competing and they're all fighting for that data. And it is valuable to the advertisers and the banks and the financial institutions. So getting that data and harnessing that to inform business is important.
There's a
question
platitude
that I
of,
think is good.
sorry.
Oh, Martin, please.
Well, there's a platitude of data. I think what Morten is saying is very valid again. If you look at the loyalty programs that is there, but also what airports have, and perhaps let us open the door a little for airlines, if we're able to combine that data. So the amount of data that we're already having is vast. I think that the predominant question one needs to think first is, what do we want to do with the data? So we tend to forget often focusing on capturing all the data, but there's not really an application for it, or it brings up questions that we have difficulty with analyzing all those statistics. And of course, as consultants, we're happy to help with that. But all kidding aside, I think that's where you should start. And that's true with many of those experience-driven changes that we very validly want to make. So if we're one more chef-driven concept, more local retailers, then how do we lower the barrier to entry, lower the threshold to the airport community? And I think one of the things that we've forgotten about that, for instance, is centralized logistics. So again, look at Amazon. They're a digital powerhouse, but they're also a logistical powerhouse. So typically working on one element of the experience forces to change the business solution. In this example, a centralized consolidation center, for example, which many airports use, or a change in your business model.
Anyone wants to jump in on that? Thomas, I don't know if you have ideas. If not, I'll move on with a question about immersive experiences. And I'll ask Morten again first, and then Swapna. Morten, your solution, your product is, let's say step one, it's a tablet. Let's say step two is goggles on the face, and then you're using that as you have your voyage through the terminal. How do I make sure I don't run into other people as I'm going through the terminal, as this becomes a metaverse environment? And that's where it goes to Swapnil.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the big issues, isn't it? But as Johan said, I mean, it's not about whether we should wear goggles, all of us. It's about using the screens available, and how can we use all learnings, concepts, ideas from metaverse thinking and get that into a more lively, a more entertaining, a more gamified kind of approach from the screens we have available. Because, I mean, we have, humongous numbers of screens available in airports, and now I'm adding even more. But I mean, that's I think that's also what I'm talking about when I say melt the metaverse together, melt it all into one pot with the reality. Because I mean, we can't sort of, if we can experience in one way in one metaverse, and we can then experience the reality afterwards. But where it really sort of pays off is where you can mix them. So I can actually be in both worlds at the same time.
I agree with what Morten is also saying is eventually, and Michael, as you rightly pointed out, we don't foresee people wearing all these wearables and moving around to have this immersive experiences. The technology is expected to evolve in such a manner that it will be applicable on the phones, and it would probably also be accessed from your laptop or even your television set. In terms of where we stand, where the metaverse experiences are today, Gucci recently had a Milan fashion show, which was in the metaverse. And that was also done with the intent because of the weather conditions. So though the show was done in-house, the immersive experience was mainly in outdoors in the metaverse. Another experience is also something which I really find a complete coexistence of physical and digital realm is in Hong Kong. McDonald's provided a metaverse version of McNuggets. And in that version, whatever that you would shop on the digital platform, you were getting coupons for which you could rather purchase in the actual real store. So the technology is too nascent, and it is expected to evolve, but it is something to look out for. That's how I see it. Thank you.
I think we should not forget that when we're at an airport, we have a great target audience, which is very different in its sense of experience in flying. So let's say if you are a non-frequent flyer, I think most of us on screen are very frequent flyers, but non-frequent flyers typically don't even feel comfortable to going upstairs to a food court. And then you have very frequent flyers who wouldn't mind to go upstairs in a lounge, in an immersive environment, and everything in between. So I think knowing your customer and programming for that customer is the first step where you need to start. And then I think what you also said, Swapnil, is look at the evolution of things. So I'm of an age where I remember people saying when they got introduced with the mobile phone, I don't need to be connected constantly. And there's some great clips on YouTube if you want to see that. And guess what now? I'm a type of person who rather walks out of his home without pants than without a phone. And don't worry, I won't stand up. But so things evolve now quite rapidly, but they do evolve, and there's not the same for everyone. So one thing that we like to say is that everything that can be digitized can be personalized. So you now have a tool to make it very personal. And of course, then your customer in this interaction can share to what level they are comfortable.
So we've heard a few immersive experiences, McDonald's, Gucci, Changi, the Jewel. Tell me one example, the best airport immersive experience you've seen. What do you think is emblematic of what we should look at for best practice? I guess maybe you don't want to put any one airport on the spot, then you can be more vague, but certainly you have an idea.
If I can go first, I believe it's Changi. That's how I see it when it comes to digital and conversions of also the physical elements. Probably Changi is leading the complete scenario today in terms of, again, bringing in the digital experience. Asia is definitely leading this complete market. What I see and what I read so far is West is still a little reluctant, and they're still looking into whether this technology will really evolve. At Munich, we are focused on bringing in the digital experience per se within bringing in having that immersive experience, but more towards an omni-channel pre-travel engagement. That's how I see it, if I could say so.
Michael, if I may add. Oh, sorry, Morten. You want to go first?
Thomas. All right. I'm just adding to Johan what you already said about Changi. I mean, the really, I think the important takeaway from them is that they've done both the physical experience and the metaverse at the same time, and in doing so, creating something completely unique that shows us how to move forward. Because it's so important to remember that we are physical, that we are tactile. We need to experience something physical, while what the digital layer adds is just something. I mean, another dimension to what we already experience. And we know that for recent years, I mean, the hunger for experience has not gone down when it comes to physical experiences. It has gone up because we now added a new dimension. So it melts together, and that's, I think, the main takeaway we should all be aware of is that we have a unique opportunity because we can do both, and we can melt it to something that will give us a unique position going forward.
Yeah, I fully agree with what both of you are saying, and especially the last shout out to Morten. It's a physical environment. We're a physical platform where we can add digital experiences. I think we need to understand that airports don't need to be first in digital developments always, and looking outside helps. contradictory almost. You would say we cannot out Amazon, but we can learn from what they're doing. And typically what I find is that trends develop quicker in the outside world rather than in the inside world of airports. So one immersive brand experience just launched was connected to the Amsterdam Dance event by Filling Pieces and Bacardi. Just did a post on that on LinkedIn because I thought it was such a great example. And that's only for a few days where these two brands collaborate, but they have merchandise. And of course, they will get a lot of attention and interaction for those two brands. And I'm sure when we get to evaluate that case study, you will see such a spin-off on interactions on Instagram, on X, on etc. And that's where the value is. So I think we should not forget that at the end of the day, retail, in my mind, is only about four things. One, it's about getting customers. Second is getting an order, making sure that we fulfill that order, and then making sure our customers come back. And getting the order and fulfilling the order, more and more you see them going detached. So in the old days, you would buy TV and walk on your shoulder down the high street with the TV. You don't see people do that anymore. And the reason is they might go in, they check out the brand, they check out the TV, order it in the store or later online and have it delivered at their home. So these two are changing. And this is exactly what this brand value, this interaction value is. Now, I hope not too many retailers are here because they don't like it when I simplify their product. But from a helicopter point of view, of course, that's how we look at it.
Thomas,
Michael, yeah, sorry. Thank you so much. Yeah, I would gravitate to what the speakers are saying today. I totally resonates with how we look at the world at Blueprint. I think the key word here is immersive, right? In order to get the maximized immersive experience, you need to engage all senses and beyond, so to speak. If you look at Changi Airport, the reason why I'm such a big fan of it, it is a great example how you engage all your senses. You want to go out there, you can scent it, you can see it, you can feel the moisture. It's totally immersive. And then we can have, of course, a conversation whether this is relevant for an airport to have or not, but purely from creating a community where feelings are engaged. That's a great example of that. I would add also Zurich Airport, if I remember correctly, in the circle, they have the virtual reality racing competition where you actually jump physically into a car and you navigate a racetrack, right? And there are competitions involved here. And again, you can have a conversation. Does that belong to an airport? In my humble opinion, totally does, because it really brings all different elements together and creates that pull effect we all want. Come to the airport earlier. Go through go through security checks faster, because if we do that, the holy grail here is adding additional minutes, which converts into more shopping time, which then increases spend per traveler. Instead of always being focused on creating, a new billion-dollar terminal, which is 15 years ahead of us, all we got to do is increase the number of minutes that passengers have airside, and then we will see an increase in spend, increase in revenue, and etc. So Blueprint is very focused on that part, not just always saying just build another terminal and then you get more travelers and then you make more money as an airport.
Great. Thanks very much. Thank you. I feel like my timekeeping, I'm a parent telling their children to go to sleep when you're so excited, and we could stay up and talk about this much longer, but I need to turn out the lights and we should go to bed. It's a few takeaways. I think Thomas started out telling us Gen Z spends less. We need to solve that problem to have the future of airport commerce and retail successful. Morten, you focused on, we've talked about macro data. Now it's time to know micro data and make sure you're getting and using that. Swapna, let's summarize this too. We saw the poll results. Everyone needs to think about how to put metaverse. Maybe we should put this broader immersive experiences into their plans. We heard a lot about big airports. I hope we can do another call and discuss what the small airports are doing. I've seen great examples recently at places you might not expect. Some airports fewer than 2 million passengers, Ryanair, Wizz Air airports that also need to, smaller budgets, smaller revenue streams, but they need to work on this as well. Thirdly, Martin, and you shared with us from Kinetic about, I like this idea of interaction between the attraction what the passenger sees and the importance for the business at the back end. So it's been a real pleasure for me. It is 12:15. It's time to turn out the lights. I hope you can join us for our next webinar, which is on the 5th of December, hosted by my brilliant and talented colleagues about facilitation in airports. If you're not an ACI member or WBP, you can log in and join that via other means. Contact the ACI membership team. Thank you all very much. And if you have questions in the audience that you did not get to ask, send them via any of the channels that are normally used. Have a great day.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you,
Yeah.
everybody.